Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with the real Nate Payo. The show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
From author Donnie Bovine comes the book, How to Be a Success Champion, available on Amazon. After years of living other people's dreams, author Donnie Bovine decided to jump out on his own and start a business, thinking it would be easy. Instead, he had a rude awakening and quickly understood that he had spent 20 years being an employee and had no idea how to be a business owner. His business was tanking, and he was on the brink of losing everything when he decided to fight for business freedom. In this must-read and life-changing book, author Donnie Bovine shares with readers his story intermingled with lessons learned from his mistakes and his failures. In How to Be a Success Champion, you will find advice the author received from mentors and how he went from zero to a six-figure business. The author walks you through the steps of how to get out of your own way, how to play the game of business and win, find your strengths, how to network effectively, how to build a personal brand, how to create champions for your business, how to get great at sales, how to take complete ownership of you and your business. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback editions. Order your copy right now. It makes a great book for corporate events too. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon.
Hello. Welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Payo. Of course, I'm your host, Nate Payo. Today, I'm joined with Alex Street. Alex is a speaker, a coach, and a storyteller, here to create moments that shape our world. As the son of a world-renowned photographer and stage actress who each risked it all to pursue their dreams, he has been a youth worker, actor, and public speaker for almost 2 decades. His specialized blend of story, structure, and next steps have left audience of all generations transformed, and event organizers consistently invited Alex to return as a speaker. Recently, Alex launched the Make Speaking Magical online video course, providing struggling and scared speakers all the tools they need to become confident communicators. Alex lives in Duffville, Ontario, as a husband to Karen and dad to 3 Gen Z kids. Welcome to the show, Alex. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. That was close. It's Stouffville, but
Stouffville.
I like Stuffville. It does.
I'm from Stuffville. What do you guys do there? Stuff?
Yeah. Oh, we got lots of stuff. So it's the middle of nowhere. It doesn't matter how you pronounce it. We just like to be thought of. That's really about it. So
yeah. What's funny is like you talk about you're coaching people to become better speakers, and maybe I grew up in a time of like public speaking was like it was something you didn't want to do. Like if you took classes in like speech class or debate class, like I hated those things and I didn't want to do them. I didn't like them in college, and you don't like. A lot of times people go like, why should I become a better speaker? I don't do public speaking. But then you like realize like you don't necessarily do it like in front of audiences, but like you might give presentations in front of like 4 or 5 people at your company, or you're better communicating with people you just met, and you learn how to like I had this class and it really showed like when you're doing your elevator pitch, like your elevator pitch should come off as very conversational, where it's so much of like somebody just thinks you're just shooting the shit with them, and it just flows like a conversation, and you don't realize that's like really public speaking skills that are very transferable. So I think I would say I've been awakened to this idea of like, hey, public speaking is a definite skill you want to practice and learn, and it's something that the more you do, the better and more natural and flow it is with you. And like those ideas carry on to just personal conversations more so than just
Yeah.
getting in front of people and giving a speech. Like it's a cool
Absolutely.
thing.
You're right on. I mean, that's why sometimes I actually prefer to say communication coach or communication trainer, because you think about speaker and everybody automatically puts you on stage with a spotlight and you're the only one up there and you get nervous, and it brings up all those feelings of like you in front of the class and, or your voice cracks or whatever, all those terrible high school memories were of taking those classes, or at work when you're up in front of a thing or in front of the group and you bomb the presentation. But it really is, as you say, it's more about you around a dinner table with friends, or it's more about you as you're hosting a podcast. Like if you're not a good communicator, you have no hope of communicating about your business, of getting your message out there, of hosting a podcast, of being a good guest on a podcast. So you're right. There's so many small skills that I've realized that for a lot of us, or for a lot of my time anyways, have kind of naturally a little bit, but I've really had to work on, and that actually these are things that we can highlight and help people communicate in such a more effective way in whatever avenue, whatever place they find themselves. So yeah, you're right on with that. And I think it's so important to dive in.
When did you kind of realize that like you had a gift for one, speaking, and a gift for showing other people how they could become better speakers, and felt like a passion for serving others in that capacity?
Yeah, that's good, because the second part of that is definitely more recent. And the first part though goes way back to really about 17 years old. So I mean, my mom was an actress, as you said in the intro, right? My dad was a storyteller through photography. My mom was a storyteller through acting, and she got me on stage as early as possible. And then I grew up in a theater. Like I knew I needed to be in front of people. I needed to tell stories in some way. But then at 17 years old, I was a volunteer in my youth group, and like helping like lead this program and play games with middle schoolers. And then one week the youth pastor just came up to me and was like I was there for a few months. I don't know what it was, what he saw in me, but he said, "Hey, do you want to speak next week?" And I was like, "What?" Like, the youth pastor gets up and kind of does a story or whatever. And I was like, "What?" And then he's like, yeah, just give it a shot. I was like, okay. And then I did it, and it was awful. Absolutely brutal, like the worst, like went way too long. There was actually an adult leader that was like sitting in the back and actually snoring. I can still like hear his rumble as that like insecure 17-year-old, like anything is picking up, or you pick up any sort of negativity. And then he came up to me afterwards and he said, he looked at me, the youth pastor, and he put his hand on my shoulder and he's like, "Man, that was pretty rough, hey?" And before I had a chance for like any other voices to come into my head that were already swirling around there, he looked at me and he said, "Do you want to try again?" And like at that moment, something clicked, right? Where I was just, and I've been doing it ever since, almost 20 years now, where I've been speaking mostly to teenagers, and then all kinds of different opportunities to speak to adults and organizations outside of that, as I kind of grew up and grew out of that space specifically. But then most recently, it really has been the last five years or so where I've realized, wow, I think I can help other people, because like I had weekly opportunities to try new things in a safe space and to explore and fail and see what works and see the outcome, because there was this consistent audience too. It just felt like a really safe space to try a lot of things. And I don't think a lot of speakers get that. And so kind of now realizing, how can I take that and all that I've learned and the natural love and passion that I have for this and turn that into something where I can, almost formalize it in any way that I can, create a simple structure or just even simple phrases and put that into a process that can help other people. Man, that is firing me up right now. And I just love it. And starting to coach people and kind of get one-on-one into your business or into your experience and what you want to work on. That's just creative, like coaching. That's like, brainstorming. That's getting in the nitty gritty. And that is so fun creating.
It is. It's a ton of fun. And what I found is like everybody has like some unique gift that they're pretty good at, and they might not always identify it because it's like what they do. So they don't necessarily think that they're an expert in it, but there's like a lesson I learned from a junior high teacher. And he was like, he taught the class in this sense where like, he'd say, if I tell you how to do something, you'll maybe retain like 25% of it. If I show you how to do it, you're going to retain about 50% of it. If you do it yourself, you'll retain about 75 of it. But if you show somebody else how to do it, that's when you're going to master it. That's when you're going to learn 100% of it. And at the time, I hated that part because I was like, I'd always do these projects. It was like an AutoCAD class when it first, like it was still relatively new. Like CAD was really new. This is in the 80s. And I'd have to go teach these other kids. And I was like this probably I was 15 years old, something like that. And there were seniors in the class. And I remember I would get done with my work early and they were all the wild, I want to say they're like the remnants of like the Van Halen high school days where it's like you smoked in the bathroom and like you like like it was like people aren't like that now, but it was like that's what they were like. And I was so intimidated to show them. But what I really learned is like, oh, like I would figure out how to do things really quickly. But then when I showed them how to do things, like I would pick up other things I missed on the last time, be like, oh, I did this last time, but it's quicker this way. So do this instead. I was like, yeah, he's right. I am learning that. And that's like a lesson that stuck with me a long time. And then when you find out that like you have a gift of something that you really like doing and you can show somebody else how to do it, it feels super special because you're like, oh, I'm showing somebody, they're getting better at it. They're loving what they're doing, but also I'm mastering it too, because they're a different way of learning than I am. So I'm learning different ways to teach myself or teach other people. So it's very cool way to.
Well, I think there's a really amazing level of humility and authenticity in that, as well as because some people will go in and they'll barge in, they'll say, I figured this out. Now I'm going to show you the way that I have succeeded at that. And you can do that, and you can do that to a certain point. But the real, as I say, humility and the real growth, I think, in that is when you go in, you try to teach somebody, but as you're teaching, you're also listening and learning about the response. And I think that's such a huge point of public speaking in general. That's the fun of being with a live audience, is you're you come in with your stuff, sure, but you also are responding to the audience, the energy in the space, what they're giving back to you. And so you're learning and kind of teaching on the fly as well. And I think that's really the fun of all of us. And again, to come back to the importance of communication skills, that's where it's used all over the place, because in any situation, you're going to come in with your idea, but you have to respond to what they're giving you back. And then that's when you learn and really grow and become even better at whatever you came in thinking that you knew all about. So,
yeah, for sure.
Hey,
so my next question for you is this idea of the word luck. What does luck mean to you, and are people lucky?
I love that. I'd love to think that I'm lucky, but I don't think that's what it is. Any good situation that I've ended up with, or any good kind of moment that has come to me, didn't just happen. It happened because I put myself on that path. Do you know what I mean? So I think, like, when I think of luck, immediately I think of like mini golf, or I don't know why, like that sort of random, because mini golf is like this ultimate equalizer. It's like there's a clown in the way of the ball getting to the whatever. So just get the ball in the hole. But then I thought about actual golf, and I got a hole in one once. Like as an 18-year-old, I was out with my buddy and I hit the ball and it got in the hole, and we just freaked out. We were dancing. We were completely beyond golf etiquette and freaking out about this thing. But I am not a golfer, like by any means. I do not know what I'm doing out there. But I got a hole. I did a thing that a lot of professional golfers haven't done. So is there luck to that? Sure, absolutely. Is the sweet spot, the wind, everything was just right. That might be lucky. But if I had never put myself on the golf course, if I had never tried that thing, if I hadn't just kind of gone for it, then that would have never happened. So there's an element to it where it might be accidental, or all the stars align, or whatever that is, call that luck. But you're never going to find those lucky moments unless you're actually putting yourself out there and putting yourself into position for that to happen. So put yourself in the room, put yourself on that stage, put yourself on the podcast. You don't know what's going to come out of it. And that might feel like luck, but ultimately it's been you kind of taking the steps along the way, right?
Like, I'm a huge advocate of that mindset of like, hey, luck happens. Sure, like good fortune can bless your way. But if you say, hey, like somebody's in the right place, right time, they got the hole in one. But if you go,
Right.
you know, the more chances you put yourself in the right places, the more likely you're going to be there at the right time. So I'm like, hey, you got to put yourself out there. You got to go to these things. And if you figure out like this general direction of where you want to go in life, like you start hanging out with those people, you're going to start interacting with people, you start connecting with people that are going to show you, teach you, educate you, and whatever it is you're going down a path that you're going to have more opportunities for success and under those circumstances occur than if you had just stayed at home and waited for the doorbell to ring, you know. So you do have to put yourself out there.
And I think that's part of it too. I find that the more generous you are, the more lucky you become. The more that you give, the more you end up kind of just accidentally receiving, right? So, and I don't know if that is actually because more comes or because you just notice more good things because you're putting out that energy into the world anyways. And so that's something I've always been fascinated by and how that comes, but there's definitely a principle in that. It's the more generous, the more lucky.
Yeah, for sure. So before the show started, we were kind of briefly talking about your passion for storytelling and, you know, how public speaking is more communications, more storytelling. How do you work with people to help them develop their story? How do they share it better? And what are the things people should be thinking about when they're deciding like, hey, I want to tell my story?
Yeah. Oh, I love this. This is just gets me so excited. This is my sweet spot. You know, this is kind of where I just lead anybody to. So I hosted a podcast for a while called Made for This. And it was really just because I wanted to get other people's stories out. So how can I like really just get somebody to tell me about how they got to be where they are? Oh, podcast is a great way to do that. So I'll just host a podcast and then try to get people to tell their stories. And what I find is that I would start asking people to be on the show. And even now I ask people, you know, to work with me or you know, to get involved in or to start talking about their story. And one of the main responses that I get, as you can imagine, is I don't have a good story. Right. The amount of people that I start a conversation, they're like, I don't have a good story though. Or like, I remember one guy said specifically, I don't have a dope story. I was like, that's it. I love that. Like, that's where we all come in with. There's this, and ultimately what you're saying there is my story isn't as good as their story, whoever they are. You heard a good story. You saw a good speaker. You have a friend who's a great storyteller, anybody. And now you immediately compare your story, what you've lived, your lived experience to their story and their ability to translate that into a powerful communicative moment. And so what I love to do is break that down right away. You're like, well, that's a load of crap, first of all, because you are here, therefore you have a story. And it's a completely unique story. If a book was written about you, it would hold chapters completely unique from anybody else. So that's just one thing. Let's just clear that out. But then I try to take people to like a transformative moment. And specifically, I think these are the most powerful stories that we have, are the transformative stories, the ones that say, I was this and now I'm this. And so, I mean, this is where I take a lot of people, entrepreneurs and kind of business owners to figure out, you know, how do I tell a story about my business? You got to figure out what your transformation point was. So for me earlier, you asked like, why did I begin speaking? And it comes down to a moment, 17 years old, when Dave, the youth pastor, said, Alex, do you want to speak? And ultimately, do you want to try again? So there's a moment, right? But if I could talk about that and that's something, but ultimately, if I want to make that into a really great story, that's only like the peak of the story arc. Like just picture a really simple arc, right? And you and your listeners could listen to this and be like, okay, so I can think of a moment. Sure, I've got a moment where I got in a car accident, or I quit the job, or my grandparent died, or my husband left me, or something, you know, something significant happened in your life. You can put that moment there. But what we want to hear as the listener, again, this could be across the dinner table, across the podcast, on the stage, whatever it is. We want to hear who you were before that. And now, because of that moment, who are you? And that's what makes a really good story. And it's so simple. I feel like I would need to like complicate it more, right? But it's actually that simple. Find a moment, tell us who you were before that moment, and tell us how you've changed since that moment. And there's your really captivating story that absolutely anybody can tell in any moment in their life.
I think, the reason why, at least for me, this would be my experience, but I think a lot of people have
Yeah.
this similar experience with it too, is why you go, hey, why is your story not that interesting? Is because
Right.
like you hear other people's stories as snapshots in time. You go, okay, here, like it said, here's you before, here's your defining moment, here's after, and you're like,
Hmm.
that is an amazing story. But the story we live, because we know it, like everything that happened, you go, oh, it's kind of this like, just kind of went through life, and like it doesn't really stand out. And you go, well, if you start pulling these parts of your story out, it does become interesting. It does become powerful. But sometimes you have to look within yourself to go, hey, who was I? Why did I
Yeah.
want to transform? How did I transform? And most of us haven't finished transforming. Like we're still on this journey, so we're still progressing. So you have to remember to go, your story's not completely written yet. It's still got a lot left to go. So you have to really kind of step back from yourself objectively and go, what would something I've been through people resonate with? And when you discover
Yeah.
that, you start realizing, and you have to share it. Like I find if you start sharing it, then you start noticing that people resonate with it, and they'll tell you like, hey, I struggle with that same thing you did, and because you did something about it, it makes me feel like I could do something about it too, and I'm inspired. And you
Hmm.
go, hey, I didn't realize my story was really that interesting. I thought nobody would care because why would I care? I
Yeah.
didn't, I'm not Rocky. I'm not this,
Yep.
stereotypical like, Hollywood movie story, but it's like you can still tell your story. You can tell your business story in a Hollywood script style excitement. And when you do that, you kind of define and lean in. And I think you discover a lot about yourself that like you might not realize your transformation moments and how you've changed.
Yeah.
You kind of go like, you know what? I was way different back then, and I am here now. And these moments shaped me.
Well, and that's it, right? So maybe you don't have the drug dealer story and you spent years in prison and you moved around the world, or you were like a great philanthropist, or you fell into money or some, like maybe you don't have those moments. And then you go, just even me saying those things, I'm already like creating this expectation of what a good story is supposed to be. But that's not it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is in the, look, I didn't know what we were going to do. I owned a business, but I felt like I needed to move across the country. So I left my business and I put my family in the car and moved across the country. Like there's your transformative story. And the thing, like those are the moments
Mm-hmm.
when other people find themselves in that. And so that's the point, right? You talk about who you were. That's where, as a business owner, that's where your ideal client is going to find themselves in the who you were.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was scared to be a speaker. I was nervous. I was all these things. Then here's what happened. Very few people are going to identify in the what happened moment because it's so unique to your story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but then when you talk about who you are, that's where your people are going to aspire to be.
Right.
So I can sit here and say who I am now. I'm a confident communicator. I can get up on any stage, I do these things. I can do bop bop bop. I can just again be with any crowd and any age, and I can transform people. That's what I can do, and I can help them actually learn how to do this too. Great, fine, whatever. That's what I aspire to be. But they're not going to relate to me
Mm-hmm.
unless they know where I came from, and that who I was is really so critical. And it's typically actually pretty boring stuff, we would
Mm-hmm.
say.
Well, I think that's true. Like if you were going to break down your story and you go, "Hey, I want to be a public speaker." And then I go and I
Yeah.
look at public speakers and I go, "Man, they're so good. Like I could never get on a stage in front of other people." And you're like, "Well, I can show you how." And you're like, "Well, of course you can show me how. You're doing it. Like it's natural for you." And
Yeah.
you go, "But it's not. Like here is where I was in the same boat as you. I was scared to
Yep.
death. I had all the same fears as you have. I still get them, and here's where I messed up, and here's how the horrible experiences could be." And then like, you go back. Like I always refer to Gary Vaynerchuk's stuff as like he's out there,
Yes.
huge. But if you go back to look at his very first Wine Library TV shows, they're not at all what he is today. Like he's grown and evolved, and like you have to find like a day one start. You have to realize like you're gonna suck. You're going to get better. You're not going to go out and
Yeah.
hit home runs the first day. Like nobody's that good. And you're getting better. And even if you are that good to start, then you probably got a lot more potential than you realize to take it to. So like You just got to get
And
going.
again, hopefully you come in with that humility to see that I haven't made it, but I've got a lot to learn still. But like, I think of like you even like hosting this podcast, Nate, like at some point you weren't.
Yeah.
So if you're here now and you're this excellent kind of, energetic and engaging and genuinely curious host, well, how did you get to be here? And so you could take this moment and say, I'm here. Well, at some point you weren't. And you kind of said earlier, like you started thinking about this in March or a long time ago and kind of started processing that. Well, there's a story in that, right? And then the moment when you actually recorded something and the moment that you hit publish, the fear that you felt when you first hit publish is a real thing. And there's so many people out there that want to start a podcast are like, yeah, but he's so good at this now. Like I'm not there yet. And what we need to hear is no, great, you're not here yet. But if you can identify with where I was, then you know that there's a journey ahead of you and you can follow the same path.
Well, it's funny you say that because like it started this way like years back, and I would always want to be doing bigger stuff. And every time I'd start doing bigger stuff, like, and by bigger stuff was like to help more people out. And I had a spirit for entrepreneurship or self-development. And I would go, okay, I'm going to be one of these guys that does that. And then I'd start posting on social media. I'd be like, oh, this feels scary. I think I feel stupid. And I'd pull it down, delete it. And I had some other businesses. I had a wine shop, and one of the guys that was, helping us out with SEO. This was in 2010, maybe a little earlier. So like
you were really looking at like Gary Vee for like inspiration on it. Yeah,
I was. And he's like, you need to do YouTube videos because you'll do YouTube videos so we can link it back to your site. I was like, okay, well, one, I don't know that much about wine. Like I read up a lot of stuff. Like if somebody didn't know anything about wine, like, yeah, I knew more than they did. But anybody that was like really into wine, I was like, an idiot.
Right.
Like I was so not an expert. So I was super insecure about making these videos. He's like, just do them. So I'd go back and watch the old Gary V's. And I was like, okay, how does he do it? Because he never came off as like a wine snob. Like I was just like cool dude that drank wine. So I was like, maybe I can model some of this. So I got better at making YouTube videos because I started doing them. And then along the course of my career, I took, some Toastmasters classes and got in that and got better at it. So like when it came time to going like, hey, I'm going to launch a podcast, I'm going to make videos and stuff like that. And I started putting them out there. It may have looked like I had been doing them for like more like a better at them than other people to start. I was like, no, I'm not better at them to start, but you don't realize that like I have probably like 8 years of dabbling experience that put me just a little bit further ahead that I was like at least confident enough that I could do it. So I would do it, and not versus that first, like, how do I do something? I'm scared to do it. But then when I started doing the podcast, I was nervous as crap doing it as well. But part of it was like, hey, you need to do it because you're going to get better in time, and it's going to lead you to meet all these cool people that you're going to go places you never thought possible. So if your why, my why was to like get bigger, network, meet more people, you have to overcome the little thing that's holding you back, which was pushing that record button. And I remember I even did like an Instagram story of me hitting publish on my first podcast on Libsyn, and it goes, error, you have the wrong like file type for your like header. I was like everything goes wrong, and like it was so stressful. And I look back on it, I was like, oh, that stress was like nothing compared to like some of the other problems I've encountered since then. So it's just, you just roll with it, kind of go. So I got a question for you. What does it mean for you to be all in on an idea or an outcome?
Oh, yeah, that's good. I mean, even that idea of all in, again, I'm so visual, right? I go right to a poker table then when it's I'm all in. Here's all my chips. I believe in this hand, or I believe that I've got something up on you, that I've been reading you enough to know that you're faking or whatever it is. But you're pushing everything that you've got out there, and there's really nothing left. So to go all in on an idea, it's really taking that. It's all in. There's nothing left back here. There's no backup plan. There's no sort of, okay, but if, actually I've got this safety net. It's really a moment when you say, I'm choosing this path. and this has been really tricky for me. So I kind of laughed when I hear this, or when I saw this, you sent it ahead of time, and I was like, yeah, what is that? And it's been really tricky for me to choose a path to go all in on, because I am just an opportunities guy. I see the opportunities. I see even my gifts and the ways that I can help people in so many different ways. I'd say most of my life I've had kind of 3 paths that I've gone, like 3 things going at once, at least. 3 ideas, 3 businesses, whatever it is. And really just in the past 6 months or so have I really chosen to go all in on this one route, on this one thing that as you said earlier, right? It comes easy to me, so I've been kind of ignoring it. But if I truly believe that I can help people communicate better, communicate their message clearer, and truly like make their business grow and transform an audience, then I have to go all in on this. And that means letting go of my other really good ideas for the time being. But I have to push all of this in and put the bet on the table.
I think that's the important thing to note is, like, a lot of times we do feel like we have multiple areas of interest, and we go like, hey, should I go all one direction or this other direction? And here we go, well, what happens if I go all in with this idea? And I've thought about this a bunch of stuff, and like let's say you go, hey, I'm going to do this podcast about this one topic, and you go and you do it, and you go like 10 episodes in, you go, you know what? I've kind of completed all there was to say about this. Did I mess up because now I can't, like, everybody knows me as this one person? And it goes back to Gary Vee, and he goes, you don't have to worry about being all over the place, in the sense of like, hey, I want to talk about networking, but I also like to talk about startup businesses, but I also like to talk about fitness, but I also like to talk about wine, but I don't want to pick just one. And you go, well, you are unique.
Yeah.
And those are the characteristics that make you all up. So why can't you be all in on the brand of yourself, which is who you are, and then just pull that back and go, hey, if I want to go really do a deep dive on one particular topic, I can take that down there as far as I feel possible. And when it's ran its course and I feel like it's not doing me justice anymore, you don't have to worry about like, oh, like I had a business that ran out of steam and it failed. It's like, no, you told your part of the story here. You're going in a different direction. It's picking up somewhere else, or maybe there's multiple characters of your story that are within you to go down, and you don't have to. And once I kind of like lifted that burden from myself, I wasn't so stressed out about like, am I making the right or wrong decision? I was doing the things that served me first, and it became a bit easier.
I think that's again, you're right on, and I love what you've added to that. And I kind of got thinking about it's not necessarily all in on an idea, and if this idea fails, I'm toast. Although there is a time and a place for that for sure, but it really is all in on you and all in on your why. And I think of some of the greatest stories of our generation. You think of the big movies like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. Let's take those. And if Frodo, like, what the all in is right away, he's got to get this ring to this mountain, and 12 hours of movie later, that's been the same thing all the way through. That movie went all in, the book series went all in on this one simple, tiny idea that then had all these other things flow out of it.
Yeah.
Star Wars, it's bring balance to the Force or defeat the dark side. And that then carries through this massive epic saga all the way through that has expanded way beyond that ultimately started with this one little boy on a farm, right? Like, it's this all in on one idea that then everything grows from. And if you can figure out what your one idea, your main story is, that's going all in. That's how you push the chips on the table, and you're going to find a lot of lucky moments if you do that, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Powerful stuff. So I have to ask you, the people you work the best with, can you describe in detail who that person is? One, you just work awesome with them. They're just so energetic to work with. But two, they love working with you, and just together you're achieving more than the both of you could on your own. You're just like the best coach, and they're just the best student.
That's a great question. Yeah, because there's so many different kinds of people, but ultimately the person has to be willing to explore and willing to dive in. So I don't think that anybody's gonna, hire me as a speaking coach if they aren't already willing. But there's got to be this willingness to create together. So I think that creative aspect, that to identify as somebody who likes to create, that's where we're going to really fire on all cylinders. Because when we get talking, I mean, this is like you and I working together, right? We didn't know exactly where we were going to go in this conversation, but we created a moment together. We created something that we just kind of did together. And so that's where that energetic exchange was really good together. And those are the people that I work best with. Absolutely. So whether you are creative as in, classical, like I paint on the weekends or something, that's not necessarily it. It's more you have an idea and you're willing to add to that idea in kind of unexpected ways. That is the creative element that I absolutely work best with, and really, man, something special happens in those moments. Yeah. So
it's like the best so no doubt, you described that. Like you feel a calling, like, hey, I want to get better at this. And I want to work with somebody that's going to shape me and put me in that direction. And then the two of you just like grow because you're both willing to be creative with the process. Love that stuff.
Yeah.
So where can people find you if they want to get connected, talk with you, chat with you, and see if you guys are the right fit for each other?
Yeah, that's great. So my main social media platform is Instagram, and that's @StreetSays. On there, I'm on LinkedIn, occasionally on Facebook and whatever, but you can find me on my website as well, alexstreet.ca, and that's got my course and it's got all my coaching ideas and everything on there. And so, I mean, if you are in any place of kind of unclear on your story, you think you don't have a good story, or you're unclear on the message that you're putting forward, and you just want to create some confidence around your communication, that's where we will be a really great fit to work together. So I'd love to chat about any of this stuff, but absolutely connect with me.
Awesome. So all those links will be on the show notes. You'll be easily be able to get connected to Alex. I encourage you, reach out, say hi, tell him where you found him, let him know, and just have a conversation, see where it goes. It's always good to connect with people, even if there's not this immediate, like on paper, we're going to work together. Like you don't know if it's going to make sense or not. I'm always saying, hey, be open to the opportunity that you're going to meet somebody that's going to make a difference in your life, and those relationships tend to blossom and go places you never thought possible. So thank you for coming on the show, Alex. Had a great time chatting with you, and appreciate it.
Nate, it's been a real pleasure. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.